Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today is top 5 niche fragrances in my personal collection. This is a video I originally did at the beginning of this channel years ago. I think it was the first or second video I ever did, and I don't believe I've ever remade it, so I thought, and actually someone recently suggested I do redo this video, and I thought it would be a good idea. There are a couple of fragrances that were in the original list that are still in the list, but it shows how good they are to me personally. So for this, I selected blends that I not necessarily wear the most, but ones that I really appreciate the blending of them, and I think that the perfumery behind it is excellent, and that the blending is top-notch, and that they're the really good representations of my favourite fragrances in that regard, where I've only allowed myself to pick one from each brand that I selected, so I don't have multiple from the same brand. I just picked the best, what I consider the best from that each one that I picked from. And yeah, we'll get into my top 5. The obvious first one hasn't changed at all. It's Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather. This, I think most people know me by now on this channel, and if you're new, this is my favourite fragrance. This one I fell in love with in, I can't remember if it was Dubai or Oman, but I was travelling back from the UAE after an offshore trip, and this was before I got into reviewing, before I got into fragrances at all. I didn't have a taste in fragrance. I had a handful of designers that I never wore and didn't particularly like the smell of, and after a split from an ex-girlfriend, I decided to, who complained that I never put any effort into wearing perfume, it led me on a journey to like, oh well, I'm going to find a perfume that suits me, that I actually can wear, that I enjoy. So that set me on a trend of researching fragrances, which led me to YouTube, because I was a user of YouTube already, and discovered all these YouTube reviews. And in my head I thought, oh well, leather is kind of something that I thought would suit me as a fragrance. So you can imagine one of the most common suggestions for a good leather fragrance was this. So when I saw it at the airport duty free, I stopped at the Tom Ford boutique and I picked it up off the shelf. I smelled it and I was like, I'm not even sure this smells of leather. I didn't get it. But I thought and I didn't know if I even particularly liked it. And I smelled a few. I smelled oud wood and a few of the major ones. But I was like, no, I'm just gonna buy it. And I sprayed it on and I bought the full bottle of it, and I got on the plane. And then on the plane I was just like, I smell amazing. I love it. Like, I just smelled just glorious. I had confidence. I was like, I smell like a boss. Not like a boss, but like a, you know what I mean. I just smelled awesome. In my head, anyway. The person next to me might not have thought so. I did spray too much. But I completely fell in love with it, and when I got back, it set a passion off, which exploded into this channel, and then exploded into me having my own brand eventually. And basically, it's led me to become a perfumer and a brand owner myself. So I owe everything to discovering Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather. Yeah, amazing fragrance. I love it still today. It's a sweet, suede leather fragrance with a little bit of kind of a saffron punch, and it just smells very sexy to me. It smells almost like that could be how your natural skin or your natural hair could smell in a weird way. It comes across kind of like that animalistic, sexy kind of vibe to it for some reason to me. I just think it's amazing. I just love the way it smells, and that love has never gone away. So next on the list is one that was in the original list too, and it's Maison Kurkdjian's Oud Satin Mood. Despite the name Oud in big letters, I don't really smell any oud in this. Best to describe this is a dark, sweet rose. There's a lot of sweetness, there's a lot of vanilla-y, sugary kind of sweetness to this, a little bit candied-like, but a sweetened rose, deep, rich sweetened rose, with kind of violet-y nuances, and the texture comes across like velvet. Even though it's called Satin Mood, it has a velvety, smooth texture to it. I think it's very, again, sensual and kind of sexy smelling, very luxurious and rich and deep, and I love it. But I don't wear it as often as I used to. I went through a phase of thinking in my head maybe it would be maybe better on a woman. I know that perfume doesn't have a gender and it doesn't matter what you wear, but I can start to think, oh well, this is a little bit more feminine, sometimes this is a little bit more masculine. I think most people go through that kind of feeling even though you wear what you like anyway, regardless. Now and again, I do wear it. I wore it a couple of times recently, and I still love it. I think it's a fantastic blend. I think it's just a beautiful, like I say, sweet rose fragrance that's, again, very sensual and makes you feel good, makes you feel rich, and yeah, it's lovely. I would love to smell it on a woman. I think fantastic for a woman. Some men might find it, like I say, leaning a little bit feminine. I still wear it myself, and it's still a fragrance that I think is really well blended and smells fantastic. It's really the only one from MFK that I'm a fan of. I've never really connected with his other blends. That one hooked me though. Next up is, we'll pick, sticking with rose, I guess, House of Matriarch's Kazimi. I obviously like quite a few from this house. They make fragrances in general that are more my taste. I don't like all of them from this brand, despite what people think, but there are obviously a number of them that I do connect with. Selecting one, I thought this is a good example of the best blending, in my personal opinion. Kazimi is a deep, dark, natural rose fragrance with woody nuances. There's natural oud and stuff in here. So it's woody, it's deep, and it's really rose centric. It's very, very dark rose, like I say, with woody, oudy, slightly spiced nuances, and it's just like a really deep, dark, thick rose bouquet, but like extra dark. And probably I would say the most masculine leaning for the rose genre. Rose in general can lean, for a lot of men, on the feminine. It can be either, rose is heavily restricted with cosmetic regulations, so most don't use heavy doses of natural rose absolutes and rose otto because they contain so many allergens that it's too restricted. So they make rose accords and they use synthetic roses and things like that, and they build a floral accord which doesn't have those allergens. So that kind of rose has a particular smell that I'm not particularly fond of, whereas real rose absolutes smell completely different, and they're a lot darker and a lot more complex, which is what this is, and it's more my taste. I really love the way that real rose absolutes smell, and this uses massive concentrations of it that you will never find in any IFRA or EU cosmetic perfume on the market. It would not be legal at all. This one is like overdosed of natural rose with, like I say, oud and kind of spicy nuances, and because of that, because it doesn't follow the trend of that kind of illusion rose accord that's kind of often hidden with sweetness to kind of mask that, so they bury it in sugary sweetness and sweet notes and vanillas, and that's why you get all these very sweet rose fragrances. A good example is MFK, although that does smell fantastic. But what I'm saying is they're very sweet, or they go into like, they smell like shower, kind of shampoo-y smells, or body lotion creams, like Lyric Man is a good example. It kind of smells to me more like a rose-scented lotion that's kind of more lighter. This, like I say, slightly more masculine leaning. And yeah, if you like rose, natural rose, that's one to check out. So that's my favourite kind of blending, and specifically my favourite rose fragrance. I haven't really found another rose fragrance that grabs me as much as that one. Next up is Ivory Roots by Xerjoff. This one, not particularly complex, but a good example of a really good vanilla fragrance. This is vanilla, sandalwood and spice, and it's quite linear. So if I'm going on like blending, maybe not the most complex of fragrances, but it makes you feel cozy and warm and rich, and it's comforting and soothing, and that's kind of what I want from a vanilla fragrance. So although it's not probably the most complex fragrance. I don't think it needs to be in this case. I think it does the job that it's meant to do, which is satisfy that vanilla need that, you know, people that really like vanilla are going to get off on this one. Vanilla is a note that I love, and yeah, just rich vanilla, sandalwood, spice, warm, cozy winter fragrance. Again, all of these, in my opinion, are unisex. Even Tom Ford Tuscan Leather I consider unisex personally. This one, great for the colder weather, great if you like vanilla. Another example of my favourite vanilla fragrance, but I don't own in my collection, would be Guerlain's Spiritueuse du Vanille. That one melts my brain. I can feel my brain dribbling out of my ears when I smell that one. It's just intoxicating to me. If you own that, then that's just amazing. I love that one. I don't own a bottle of it, but it is absolutely gorgeous. This is another good example of a nice vanilla fragrance. Last on the list, but not least, is for Manle's Fatih Sultan Memhed. There's two from this brand that I really like a lot, the other one being Bojnikov. In terms of blending, this one I think is top notch. I find it really hard to describe, and it smells fantastic. I love this one, I wear it often. This one it's a floral-y, soapy, clean, effervescent yet deep, slightly incensey fragrance. It's really hard to describe. It's almost like I say, like a floral soap, but with an incensey vibe and a slight fruity vibe. It's just beautiful. Very elegant, I think, is a good word to describe, and quite unique. I've never smelled another fragrance quite like this one. I think it's beautiful, and opulent is another good word. It's just a beautiful fragrance. I love this one. Again, completely unisex, and I haven't really talked about seasons for these. Usually my favourite fragrances are a heavier kind of winter fragrances, which are all of these basically. This one is a little bit lighter. It's not got that darkness that the others have. So I would probably say spring is a good season for this one, spring and autumn. Whereas those ones are more kind of winter based, heavier, darker fragrances. This one is a bit lighter, but absolutely beautiful. That's it, that's my top 5 from my personal collection. Picking one from a brand, obviously, and taking into consideration not quite how much I wear them in frequency, but more that I admire their blending and I admire the feeling that they give inside me. And yeah, the feeling that they give me and the blending and just the perfumery behind it, I think is excellent. And they're my personal top 5 niche fragrances in my personal collection. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time with another one. Bye everyone, take care.